All right, welcome back to Thompson to Clark. Brad and I are here on a Tuesday. We try to go on Mondays, but I think Brad, what did you get? The Disneyland
I
flu? What
I
happened?
yeah, that's exactly what it was. Just started out with the older one, and then both the younger one and I got it at the same time. Denise, clear, totally free and clear, which is great.
Immune system, man. What an
Yeah, as
immune
long
system.
as mom is healthy, the house continues to run like clockwork. But when she goes down, oh man, it's a mess. So, but yeah, so Audrey and I are recovering. Layla's already recovered, but yeah, it's a tired household, I can tell you that.
Well, because of that, we'll try to, we don't want to keep Brad here forever. We want him on the mend so that next week he'll be 100%. So we'll probably go a little shorter today. We'll talk a little bit about I guess it's the story of the offseason, which is you sign Matt Chapman and then you kind of
All
give
hell
give
breaks
JD
loose.
Davis the okey doke, and he's now without a job. We're going to try
Yeah.
and explain this because I think I understand like 90% of it, but there's other
Okay,
pieces
good.
of it
Yeah.
where I'm like, I'm not exactly sure what happened here.
I'm at
But
like 50%, so you can fill me in.
but we'll also talk about some of the baseball that we got to see this weekend. I only
Yeah.
watched about 5 innings of the game,
Mm.
but so I didn't actually finish it. I'm trying to figure out, like, I have this really down with Warriors games in that if I start a Warriors game about an hour late, I can actually get caught up by the time the game is almost over. And
Right,
so I
right.
do this, because the Warriors game start at 7. My wife usually starts kind of winding down about 8:30, especially if we have the kids. She gets the little one down around that time. And so I have like, that time to start the game and then I'll get through it. And I've like perfected it. So part of this is after every basket, I hit the 10-second skip on the Apple TV.
There you go.
And so by
Uh,
the time
and that's with the Hulu app, right? You're on
right,
Hulu
right.
Live, right? Okay. And
So
that's the little forward button?
yes.
Hey, there we go. Yeah, because I do that, and if I hit it too many times too fast, locks up the app,
Yeah,
and I have to
yeah, it's not
close
it's
the
not
app.
great.
Okay,
That
all
like
right.
it, we want it to be so perfect and it's
Mm,
it's it's pretty darn good, but yeah,
it's
I
good.
would I would
It's
like
good.
it to be kind of in tune with me. Like it should just read my
Yeah.
mind and just do it. So I get that 10-second skip. Now every time there's a free throw, I skip through the entire free throws. Like I don't care if they make or miss unless it's like a meaningful one near the end of the game. So I do that and I'll obviously through all the commercials and through all the stoppages of plays, I'm hitting that fast forward button. I can get through a 12-minute quarter in about between 10 and 11 minutes. So I'm pretty much watching, the NBA is a 48-minute game, but because of all the other stuff at halftime, it's about a 2 hour and 20-minute experience. So I'm
Sure.
like cutting it down like to like a third, and I've like really mastered that. Now, it's really hard on baseball.
Yeah.
So the pitch clock, if you can see the pitch clock, and you can see the pitch clock in spring training, I can sort of figure it out. But I was having issue out because I just want to see every pitch, right? I just went
Yeah.
boom, show me the pitch, boom, show me the pitch. And I was screwing up. So I need to get a lot better. I need to figure out the rhythm of this stuff a little bit better. But I was trying to do the same thing because I started the game late and I tried to catch up. And then I was like, this is not a great experience for me. I haven't figured it out yet. So I got through 5 innings and we got to see some Giants baseball. We'll save that for the end because we have to talk about this JD Davis thing.
Yeah. Crazy.
So we believed, now we weren't 100% sure, but we definitely believed that Matt Chapman was possibly on his way to the Giants. He was sort of like the
Yeah.
perfect fit. Defense, Bob Melvin probably when he accepted the managerial position, like one of the things was like, hey man, we got to go hard after Chapman. That's my guy. So they finally get Chapman after spring training had already started. And then the question was, okay, what happens with JD Davis? JD Davis was the only player to actually beat the Giants in an arbitration case in years and years and years and years. Now, I think the Giants do a pretty good job of settling these cases before they actually go to arbitration.
Mhm.
I don't see a lot of these things go to arbitration. So Jay Davis wins the arbitration case, and this was, weeks ago. And now we fast forward and we go, oh, we got Chapman. JD Davis is probably going to get traded. Who are we going to trade him to? Now, here's where it got really tricky because according to Farhan, there was no market for JD Davis. And then the question becomes, well, how is that so? He's a very productive ball player. I think the teams figured that the Giants were bluffing when they put him on waivers because the teams knew that there was this little hole in the clause and knew that more than likely the Giants were just going to unconditionally release him. Now, you and I, when we saw that they released him, we were like, what in the hell is going on? This is not something that we understand. And so we had to dig and we had to read, and thanks to Bags and thanks to Pavlovich and thanks to all of the people who really understood this and really kind of dug into the CBA and figured out what it was. So what it sounds like is in the latest CBA, what the players wanted was that these ARB cases that actually happened, they want that money to be guaranteed in some way. That's part of the 10% that I'm not sure I completely understand from the timeline level. But that is what they thought was a win in the new CBA, was something to do with arbitration and teams having to make that money guaranteed. So what happened is when the Giants released him, there is a hole in the process in which it is not guaranteed. The money is not guaranteed if you actually go to arbitration. If you actually strike the deal with the player before the case actually goes to arbitration, that money is guaranteed, but it's not if the case is actually decided. So let me read from Bags because he's going to explain it better than I can. I'm just going to read from his piece. He wrote, in a dramatic reversal of fortune, the Giants placed Davis on unconditional release waivers on Monday, cutting ties with a player who had won a $6.9 million salary when he beat them in an arbitration hearing in February. Because the provision in the CBA specifically does not guarantee arbitration salaries arrived at through a hearing, the Giants owe Davis just 30 days of termination pay, which amounts to little more than $1.1 million. So JD wins the arbitration case against the Giants. $6.9 million is his salary for this season. And the Giants, they released him, and all they're on the hook for is the termination pay. So they only paid $1.1 million out of that $6.9 million. Now, are you with me to that where we are now?
100%.
Okay.
And I'm sure you're probably going to get to the part too where he might have a grievance and might have a chance to file a grievance, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, we'll see now. From what I understand, the Mets, he could possibly be going back to the Mets. I saw something today that said the Mets are interested.
There's 6 other teams as well. So.
Okay, so back to Bags. Giants president of baseball operations, Farhan Zaidi, who appeared on a hastily arranged Zoom call with reporters on Monday, said the team attempted to trade Davis with no traction. That is where I'm just like, how? He's a valuable baseball player. Not everybody is happy with their team right now. Like, what's going on? So that was a question for me. The Giants placed Davis on outright waivers this past weekend in the hopes that another club would claim him and speed the process along. Now, this is the quote from Farhan. As soon as we got the word he went unclaimed on outright waivers, we decided to make this move. It just boils down to Roll and other guys we had ahead of JD in terms of at-bats. If we had a 28 to 30-man roster, we'd keep everybody, blah, 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 blah. So that is the interesting thing to me is, why didn't the Mets claim him when he was on waivers? Is it because they would have been on the hook for the full 6.9, and maybe they knew that the Giants, the flip side of the Giants was that they were just going to release him and that they could actually bring him in for a lower dollar amount? That's my question.
Yeah, I believe that's what it was, because it almost sounds like every GM saw this quote unquote loophole, even though it's not really a loophole. It's in there. I mean, it's in the contract. It's not something that's hidden. It's in the CBA. Um, I think every GM saw that and realized that, well, the Giants are trying to trade him. They're trying to waive him. They're trying to do all these things. Let's just let it go. And then he's a free agent and he's going to get his 1.1 million. So maybe we can talk 5 million, 4 million. We could save a couple million, get JD Davis at 4 or 5, because he's already getting paid 1.1 this season.
Right.
So yeah, they're going to get him at a little bit of a bargain, or maybe on a 2-year deal with a lower AAV. All kinds of different things that they can do if they, rather than just grabbing him off of waivers or trading for him and taking on the full salary. Some other things I've seen out there is, if Farhan was able to trade Ross Stripling and eat half of his salary to the A's, why wasn't he able to do that with JD Davis? And maybe there just wasn't enough time. There's not enough, you only have 2 days to make this negotiation with the waiver claim. So maybe that's just what it was. He didn't have the time to make this deal, which, again, I don't know. We're not in on all of this stuff. And again, maybe there's a lot of teams that are apprehensive. I mean, we both saw it. We saw the horrendous second half that JD Davis had. It was nothing near his first half. Now, if he can bounce back, and it was only a year ago, if he could bounce back and have a season like he did in the first half of last season.
I mean, he was like that, borderline all-star candidate for the Giants in the first
absolutely.
half.
But then after that, just an under 200 hitter, striking out at high fastballs. It was really rough. But again, with the platoons and everything else going on last season, the locker room, the way it was, who knows what was going on. I like JD Davis. I enjoyed watching him. I thought he played some pretty good defense, much better than in the past. And I still think he's a power guy who can hit 25 home runs, maybe even 30 home runs if he's given everyday status at third base.
And I think folks would probably say, if you were to excuse JD's second half, I think he had like a finger injury or something that maybe they credit to his poor second half, but who knows? Yeah. Okay, so now there is a disagreement between the Giants and JD's agent. So Farhan says this loophole, and maybe to Farhan it's not even a loophole. So this idea that if you actually go to arbitration and the money not being guaranteed, Farhan believes that is meant to be a deterrent to negotiations actually reaching the hearing stage. So that is there so that the teams and the players actually come together before actually having to go to arbitration. So for people who don't understand what arbitration is, basically the team has a number that they want to pay. The player has a number that they want to play for, and the judge has to decide which number is the right number. And so it's just like a trial. Like the Giants are going to go, well, look at his second half, just like Brad said. He hit under 200. He struck out so much X, Y, and Z. And on the other side, they're going to say, well, he was a first half near all-star. And it was an actual injury, and he was playing through the injury, and maybe the coaching staff should have given him a rest, or maybe he should have went on the IL. Like that's kind of what I assume what the negotiation is like. And I'm sure it even gets deeper than that. It's like,
and it's all closed doors. So unfortunately, we've never, as baseball fans, been able to see this, which is
maybe fortunately, because
what
if it was like, well, every Tuesday, like he didn't stretch with the team, and
that's the thing too. They always talk about, if you go to arbitration, if you don't settle before arbitration and you go to trial, as a player, your feelings are going to get hurt.
And
you
yeah,
kind of
and
have
it
to
could
take
hurt,
that out of it, but
and it could hurt the relationship between the
yeah,
player and team based on, because you kind of go, oh, that's what they are tracking when they're actually telling me that they're tracking this. They're also looking
right.
at this. Okay, so what was the number that the Giants offered, and what was the number that Team JD wanted? So before, I guess it was about this is coming from the JD side, about an hour before the deadline. So you have to put your numbers in, so that this thing goes to the actual arbitration case. The Giants reached out to JD and offered a little bit under 6.4 million. Now JD said if they would have offered him 6.55, which is actually what they filed, JD said that they would have agreed to that. Team JD, according to the Giants, didn't want an offer at less than a 7 in front of that number. So the Giants sent their offer to him, like I said, an hour before the deadline. And Team JD, according to the Giants, did not get back to the Giants until 10 minutes before the deadline. So, then Zaidi said they then filed at 6.7 million, or I'm sorry, 6.9 million. And as we just said, Team JD, according to the Giants, wanted that number to start at 7. And several hours after the deadline, they called looking to engage in a settlement. Zaidi then said, we said that out of fairness to our other negotiations and to maintain credibility with our policy going forward, we were not in a position to negotiate once the exchange deadline had passed. Now, my read on that is that if it was a player that they really, really, really wanted, they would have done anything to negotiate, no matter what the
Right.
deadline is.
Yeah.
But because it was JD, and maybe they kind of in their back pocket knew that Chapman was coming, they played a little hardball in that scenario. That is my read. I don't know if that is true or not, but just the way that Zaidi said that, that's what it sounds like to me. And again, this is the business of baseball. I was posting when we read this, and this was really before I understood it. Now, I still think it's part of the dirty side of business. But I tweeted something out that said, so there's a Tribe Called Quest lyric that says, industry rule number 4080, record companies are shady. And so I tweeted that. I said baseball's version of industry rule number 4080. And this is almost like, it's almost like the loophole is there for the players that the owners or the team, they're just kind of frustrated with it. Now,
Right.
here's what I don't know. Okay. Let's say the Giants won the ARB case. Let's say that number came in at 6.55 instead of 6.9. Could the Giants still void that contract and release him? That's what I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. Everything I've read, I don't know. Yeah, I don't. The whole thing's such a mess, and obviously when things like this happen, we want to blame somebody. I think just all around, everybody kind of has a little bit of blame in this. The agent, JD Davis, Farhan, I think they all kind of, obviously, like you said, it could have been done better. If it was Yaz, that was my example the other day. If this was Yaz,
They're like,
maybe
oh,
they,
we need filters. We don't
yeah,
really need
we
third
as
basemans.
and there's probably a priority list. I'm sure there's a priority board, and it goes this, and JD Davis could have been last on that priority board, and that's why he gets such a late number.
Mhm.
Obviously, JD Davis's priority is JD Davis. JD Davis's agent's priority is JD Davis. But Farhan has a list. We want to get these guys taken care of first. They go into our budget. Yaz goes into our budget. Tyro goes into our budget. All these guys got taken care of, and the business was done. And then, like you said too, with JD Davis, it came down to, well, don't know if we need you that much. and that's a really high number. We don't want to spend $7 million on you this season because we're pretty sure you're not going to be here. So here's the deal, and here's how it's going to go. At no point did they throw out to his agent and say, "Oh, by the way, if we go to trial and you win, we're probably going to release him because if we get but again, if they don't get Chapman, they don't release him. So you can't really say that either. So that's why I think a little bit of it on both sides was in good faith. And they're each working for their client, Farhan for the Giants and JD Davis's agent for JD Davis. So they're both working for their client in a negotiation to try to get the best for their client.
Okay, so here's what I also wonder. Does JD Davis's agent go to him and go, "Hey, there is this provision in that if we don't actually reach agreement before the hearing, they could void your contract." Does that conversation happen between player and agent?
If he's a good agent, yeah, I would hope so. I mean, if he's on top of the rules, I mean, an agent kind of has the legality in his pocket, so he should know the CBA inside and out since he's representing a player who is in the CBA. So I would hope that was discussed beforehand. That's a fantastic question for somebody to ask him.
Yeah.
One of these reporters to ask, "Hey, did you know about this clause? And did you discuss this clause before you decided?" But again, the agent is basically saying, "We didn't have time to decide." But Farhan's saying, "You had time to decide, but you came at us with, what was it, 7 minutes left, 10 minutes left in negotiations, and your number was not a number. It was it has to start with a 7."
Yeah.
So at that point, Farhan's like, "We have more than 10 minutes of negotiation here, so I don't think this is going to work." And again, I'm not siding with one side or the other. I'm just looking at what the he said is on all of this.
Yeah, because if the agent knew that this could be a possibility, I can't, like, the Giants go, okay, 6.4 or 6.35 or whatever that number was. And if you really want 6.9, but you know that they can call your bluff and maybe you don't get 6.9, maybe you go, what about 6.6? And then you kind of work from there to say the number has to start with 7 in order for us to, to come to agreement before this hearing. That sounds to me a little bit like we know what his market is, and his market is going to be bigger than what you guys even see it as. And that's what's kind of weird to me, because JD Davis is a good player. I would imagine all the teams who were in on this Matt Chapman thing, they should be chasing JD Davis because he's not the defender that Chapman is.
Right.
He'll probably hit for a higher average. He may not, they may be comparable in power.
Good right-handed DH.
If
you've already got a third baseman.
So that is thing. I wish I knew the answer to that question.
Right. And I hate to see him not in our lineup, but again, with Soler and with Chapman now, there is not room for another right-handed bat, because you're not going to platoon him with Chapman at third when you've got a guy like Casey Schmidt who you can plug in there. So it is kind of tough. It's kind of tough. It's just an odd man out situation. And I think Farhan too honestly thought, maybe I can get something for him if other people don't realize this little catch in the CBA. But everybody did. I read all the GMs are pretty smart. They're on top of the CBA. That's their job, and that's why I would hope the agents were in the same situation too, where they were on top of it. But it kind of seemed like his agent felt slighted and like, man, it was there. We didn't know about it because that's not our job. We're just fans. We're not reading the CBA inside and out. We've got enough going on.
Well, here's the other thing. Okay. What if the Giants didn't get Chapman? Are they in the JD Davis game, or are they just so mad that they're looking to trade him?
No, I think they're in. I think he's your starting third baseman.
Okay.
The spring he's having, I mean, he was hitting 400 with a couple of home runs. I think if you don't get Chapman, I mean, he was playing almost every day in spring until the day after Chapman was signed and hadn't played since.
Yeah.
So I think he's our third baseman if the Giants don't get Chapman. So yeah, that's why it's hard to see him go, because again, I'm looking at his numbers. His first half numbers last year, he had an OPS plus of 117, which is not fantastic, but it's above average. 117. His March and April, he had an OPS plus of 142 or 138 with 6 home runs and 17 RBIs in the first month and a week of the season. Hit 289, then just kind of fell off, and then started to turn it on again when September, October hit, and had an OPS plus of 129 and hit 262 with 3 home runs. But if you look at the first half totals, he hit 277 with 11 home runs and that 117 OPS plus. And then the second half, OPS plus of 76. That's well below average.
Mm-hmm.
And hit only 207. I thought it was under 200, but just 207. But again, the potential's there. And if he could play every day, there's Susan Slusser wrote another article about, the platoon situation that the outfielders were in last year. Nice little interview with Yaz and Conforto talking about how they're excited to be able to play every day again, because that's where they thrive. And I'm sure JD Davis, if he can get into a situation where he can play third base every single day, 100, let's say 150 games, 145 games in the season, I think maybe he might have a nice little season.
Yeah. So where does this leave the Giants? Well, the Giants shaved nearly $6 million off of payroll obligations and now stand roughly $13 million underneath the first luxury tax threshold of $237 million. Now, I don't give a crap about the luxury tax at all, except if it means that they're going to go in on another starter,
Right.
because that means that they cannot afford Blake Snell, but you would go over that first target, and I don't think that they would hit the second target. And maybe without this $6 million saved, if they went for Blake Snell, maybe they would go over it. So I don't know exactly how that stuff works, but that is something that is an interesting thing coming out of this overall. After all is said and done, they have more money to spend.
And thinking of Blake Snell at this point, too, if they sign Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery, we only have 2 weeks left in spring training. So those guys aren't going to be pitching until, God, I can't even imagine, probably halfway through the first month of the season, 3 weeks into the first month of the season. So the Giants would still be hamstrung in the back end of the starting rotation. So it would be exciting. But again, the deal, my boat has sailed on all that. I know everybody's sign Snell. I mean, I kind of rather just roll with what we've got. Roop is looking fantastic. Dalton Jeffries can eat some innings. Cobb's going to be back way sooner than was anticipated. Kyle Harrison is looking nasty. Logan Webb looks like poo-poo in the spring, but he doesn't pitch very well in the spring anyways. But even he said, like, this is not my best spring and I'm not happy about it. So
it's too warm. He can't get the sinker grip.
And give me a pissed off Logan Webb. I'll take that too.
Yeah. So. Yeah. All right. Before we get to this weekend, watching some of the game that we did, and like I said, I don't want to go too long here. We got Brad in good voice here. We don't want to ruin it. I'm hanging
in.
I mentioned last week that I wanted to try the hop water. So I used. I think you talked about this one, the Sierra Nevada Hop Splash.
That one's fantastic.
So it's zero. There's no alcohol in it. There's no calories in it. It's just water made with Citra and Amarillo hops,
which are the good ones.
So I took the water, I put a ice cube sphere, an ice sphere, and I put a shot and a half of the of the Irish, not the Irish whiskey, but the IPA whiskey, and just to give it that beer flavor with the hops water. Now, it doesn't taste that different than if I was just to use normal sparkling water. There's a little bit more bite to it because the hops water has some kick to it. But it is good, and I think you don't need the IPA whiskey if you're just a highball person and you want to have like a different way to do a highball. This would be a very good. So I'm happy with my experiment. I was, because when I did the one last week with the hop water and the tequila, I was like, in my mind, this tasted a lot better than it actually turned out. But in my mind with this one, it kind of tastes exactly what I thought it would taste like.
Nice. So, excellent.
That might be a fun one for the spring as we get to warmer months.
Yeah, I'm going crazy here. I have tea. What kind do I have? Yogi. I think it's vanilla peppermint. It's really good. But I did. My wife got a bottle of Jim Beam, and I like the standard Jim Beam for mixing into like Zevia colas and stuff, and ginger ale and everything. That's a good mixer. Jim Beam is a fantastic mixer. And she got the the Jim Beam Black. It's double oaked, double char oaked, barrel aged, and it's normally like $25, but our local Smith's grocery store had it for $22.99, and then we had a $3 off coupon, so we got it for $19.99. So I'm hoping by next week I can bust that out, because I have tried a little bit, but I had a fever when I tried. And
that might be good for the fever, actually.
It was not. So then, about an hour after I finished it, I was like, what did I do? And I thought I was on the back end of this thing. It was Saturday night, and it was the kids were getting ready for the prom and all that stuff, and I just finished cleaning the house, and so I thought, I'll take a shot of this. I'll give it a try, and it tasted good. But then an hour later, my head was screaming. So yeah, that was a mistake. So next,
like fun.
Yeah, next week I'm hoping to have that. So
yeah. Where are you on the idea of a hot toddy as a way to kind of deal with an illness?
No, mainly because for me, alcohol kind of inflames my sinuses a little bit. So if I've already got that happening, that's a killer for me. Now what's not bad for me in moderation is caffeine. So with our coffee maker, I discovered finally how to make Americanos, which is my favorite coffee drink.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I love Americanos.
Yeah, just an espresso shot with hot water. And ours actually has a hot water dispenser. So I thought, oh, shoot, I can make a 4-ounce shot of coffee and then add 10 ounces of water, and it's fantastic. So I can do that as long as I'm drinking a ton of water. And speaking of that, when I have the flu like this, and it's all sinus stuff, it's not stomach flu, it's all sinus, chest, all that good stuff, I will drink 1.5 gallons of water a day. And so I'm on my last half gallon of water right now, and that keeps things moving, and it actually keeps me like wide awake and really nice. So that's what I've been doing. But yeah, hot toddy, I've tried that in the past. Now you can make a pseudo hot toddy and just not add the bourbon to it, but all that stuff is good. Just the hot water, the cinnamon sticks, some cloves, honey and lemon, and just don't put the bourbon in it. And that works for me because it just kind of opens things up a little bit. So that, or you know what, pound down a pepperoncini. How about that? I had one of those last night. Got stuff flowing, man. Talking about my mucus. Nobody wants.
Okay, let's talk about some baseball that we watched. Now, unfortunately for me, in the innings that I watched, I don't think the Giants scored. They had guys on base, but they did not score.
Not until the 8th or 9th. I think it was the 8th inning we scored, 7th inning, something like that.
So Jordan Hicks was on the mound, and I think people were like, "Oh, we get to see this kid. He's throwing who throws 103 out of the gate." Starter version of Jordan Hicks is probably dialing it down a bit.
Yes, which is good.
Reliever Jordan Hicks, if he's only got to throw 20 pitches, he may throw a couple of them at 103. But he is going to, if we want him to go 5 innings, 6 innings, he can't throw like Duvall, on every pitch. So I guess I was surprised at how often he threw the slider. The slider, I guess when you throw that hard, you don't have to have like pinpoint control the slider, because the slider was all over the place and these guys were still swinging and missing.
Oh, yeah, because it looked like it was coming in the zone so
Yeah.
fast, and it was tight and breaking hard. He did say in his interview, I think it was with John Miller or Dwayne Kuiper, after he came out of the game, that yeah, he was kind of dialing back the fastball a little bit, but mainly working on getting the slider going, getting the curveball going on his off-speed stuff. If he can mix well, and Patrick Bailey's calling a good game, he could be a pretty nasty starting pitcher. It's just going to be the stamina. It's going to be how long can he go,
But the flip side of that is, I was thinking, if I was a hitting coach, I would just tell the batters, don't swing at anything breaking stuff. It's kind of like, it's almost like Lincecum back in the day.
Yeah.
Like, Lincecum's fastball was kind of, he didn't have pinpoint control, but then he would throw the breaking stuff. And these guys are I would just go, don't even swing at it. It's more than likely not going to be in the zone. But again, that is really hard. This is why hitting is hard.
Well, and if he's throwing his slider that hard, it's pitch recognition at that point. Yeah. Is that the fastball or is that the slider? I'm not quite. That's why Nolan Ryan was so nasty, because all this stuff was so hard except for that curveball.
Yeah, and he would throw it all and it'd look the same coming out of his hand.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on our leadoff hitter there, Jung-Hoo Lee?
I like that he can go 0-2 and he can come back and battle. He sees pitches, which is awesome. I mean, he's your prototypical leadoff hitter, which is great. He does pop a lot of things up, like Willie Mays Hayes. You pop it up, you drop down and give me 10. but he's going to be fun to watch. He's one of those guys that every time he came up, I kind of stopped what I was doing.
I was very interested in seeing what he was doing.
I want to see his at bats. And then Bob Melvin did talk about in an interview also with Susan Slusser that he wants to have consistency in the 1 through 5 at least. So Jung-Hoo Lee is going to be in there against righties and lefties. We've already heard that. Conforto is going to probably be in there at all times against lefties, and Yaz is going to be in there against lefties as well. There's not going to be a whole lot of platooning. He did talk about if there is platooning, it'd probably be between Yaz and Slater.
That would make a lot of sense.
Exactly, but not a ton. It's still going to be Yaz. Yaz did complain about that. He said, I was just not consistent last year because I would get into a game, I would get 2 at bats or 1 at bat, and all of a sudden you see a lefty in the bullpen, and it would get into my head that I'm coming out of the game.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I'd get on deck just to give the other team a look like I was in there, and then I would get pulled. So less robotic this season, I think, and guys are going to get a little more comfortable. I think we're going to see more offense and more happy guys. I think that can't be. I don't think that can be overstated, the fact that we're going to see guys who are happy in the clubhouse, happy with management. Any struggles are going to be on them, not so much looking to say, hey, Skip, try to give me like 3 games in a row or 4 games in a row. Because that's what Conforto was saying too. After his hamstring injury, he came back, but he couldn't get consistent at bats to get going because of all of the platooning. So he just never had a chance to get it going. And they said, we're not making excuses, but we're doing what we can with the at bats that we have, which were not much.
He also said he came in too big, and so he lost some weight
Yes,
coming
that
in.
too.
Uh,
That
uh,
too,
I
and a
wonder if
full
that was
spring
that
training
was
helping.
that was that a strategic too big, or was that a like I let myself go too big? Like
It
that,
could have
I
been
wanted
as
more context on that one.
It could have been a strategic too big because he could have also known, like, hey, I'm probably going to be playing a little more DH.
I need to hit the
Uh,
ball over the fence.
exactly. And then they decided, well, you're going to be playing some outfield. And then, because that was the whole thing with his arm, too, the arm surgery. They weren't exactly sure when he was going to be able to play the outfield. And they kind of shoved him back in there and said, well, you're ready after spring. You're in the outfield. So here you go. But he's going to be the starting left fielder, barring any kind of injury or anything else, when the season starts. And that'll be what, number 17 in a row, starting left fielder. So that's fun.
Here's what I'll say about the non-platooning. They better come out of the gate hitting, because you
Yeah.
don't want to give the new manager, like the new manager is going like, okay, we kind of overcorrected in this whole thing, and we got to pull back a little bit. But if Yaz starts the season like 1 for 30 and he's got like 10 strikeouts against left-handed pitching, like there's a reason why he wasn't hitting against lefties in the first place, right?
Right.
I think they're gonna have to. Those guys are gonna have to come in hot, because Jung-Hoo Lee, there's 100 million reasons why he's gonna have all the opportunity in the world. And for Conforto on a 1-year deal, and for I think Yaz is a beloved player, but they also know that he has the mental capability of being a bench guy, and like they understand he's been that. He hasn't really been a starter for his whole career. So those are the things that I think about when I hear that, is like, okay, you guys may get what you want, but there may be less of a rope as far as struggling is concerned. So that is my hope, is that they come out hot and they basically show the manager, like, see, this is what we can do when we're playing. You mentioned stopping what you were doing when Lee came to bat.
Mhm.
Jorge Soler, holy
Oh, yeah. Oh,
cow.
for sure. Yeah.
That dude swings hard.
Yes.
Like, he hit a ball down the third baseline.
That was a shot.
I'm not sure that was a foul ball. I don't think the umpire had enough time to turn and look. I think
Right.
he hit it so hard. He just like a guess. It was like, I get, like, we didn't get a good replay, but
Yeah, and in spring, you're not gonna get the replays because you
no.
don't have those cameras. But yeah, when the umpire jumped out of the way and just threw his hands up, I thought he was just throwing them up to get the hell out of the way. And then oh no, he's making a foul signal. Okay, got it. Because that thing was
Dude.
shot down in the corner. I thought, oh, nice, he's gonna get a double out of this. I know he doesn't have the wheels,
Yeah.
so he's gonna have to hit stuff into the gaps. Especially, I mean, who knows? I'd love to see him hit a ball into Triple's alley, because that'll be interesting to see how
To
that's going to
see him
play
truck
out.
around.
Yeah.
Now this means nothing when it comes to putting a winning baseball team together. So just take that for what I'm about to say.
Right.
He just looks cool.
Oh no. I mean, it's not going to put a winning baseball team together, but we didn't have anybody who looked cool last year.
Yeah, he just in the dugout, and you look at him and you're like, that dude looks like a baseball player. He looks like somebody who's good at his job. Yeah. And on the flip side, you look at Jung-Hoo Lee and you're like, that dude kind of has style, and he's got a little bit of swag to him. Like, those are guys, and again, as far as winning baseball is concerned, it doesn't matter much. But when you are trying to create a fan base, when you're trying to create fan favorites, those are the type of guys, if they are good players, they will attract the fans because they have charisma.
Yeah.
And the fans are going to gravitate to that. So I'm hopeful that, we've been having this conversation for the last 2 years. If you have a kid who is a baseball fan, whose jersey are you going to buy? And it's like, well, we got Logan Webb, and then who else? Well, now we got Lee.
Yeah.
He just, if he's a good player, he may be the one. And then you have Soler. The Giants are going to have Soler for 3 years. If this dude hits, 30 jacks every one of those 3 years, he's going to be, on the Mike Krukow and Dwayne Kuiper list of good Giants. Just there.
And Kyle Harrison, he looks like he's a little fired up too. That whole game against the Dodgers when he was on the mound and he kept, pointing. He's like, the mound is wet. I'm not getting my footing, and he was getting irritated and everything else. And he's got a little fire to him too. You can't market bland, but you sure can market flavor. And I think the 2024 Giants, definitely have more flavor this year than they did last year. They can win more games. I hope so. I mean, they've got the roster that I think their roster is definitely better than it was last year. So I think they can win some more games. Now, starting pitching is going to be the issue, but anything else, I mean, so much flavor all over the place. I don't think the Giants did enough with the Rodgers twins. I think they need to do more.
I agree.
Marketing with them.
That should be a thing. Crawford and Brandon Belt, right? Those guys were a part of the local marketing. Do the same thing with the Rodgers twins. We got to see more of those guys.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna shut it down so Brad can continue to get on the mend, and he can be back next week 100%. But so a little bit shorter of a show, but if you are watching us on YouTube, hit that like button if you can, and make sure you're subscribed to this channel. And if you're listening on our audio feed on the BSPN Network podcast network, make sure you're subscribed to that as well. I've said this before, but because we started that channel as an actual Thompson to Clark channel, this is the most popular podcast on the audio feed for sure. And it kind of alarms me sometimes when I see the number of downloads of this show compared to some of the others. I go, oh yeah, because it started as a Thompson to Clark feed.
Yeah.
So we got the baseball folks in on early. But, you can listen to the Warriors and the Niners podcast. The Niners podcast. So we were going to do one last night. And then we were thinking about doing one tonight, but I'm pushing it all the way to Wednesday night. So it'll be on YouTube Wednesday night, and then it'll be in the feed on
tons
Thursday
of free
morning.
agency action.
The free agency stuff is ridiculous. Oh my God.
I cannot keep up with it, man. It's not like baseball.
Yeah.
It's not like even hockey. It's not like basketball. Football free agency is a whole different thing, man.
And the Niners are not getting the players that the fans want. I know that for a fact. This is going to be a heated offseason.
You're going to enjoy Leonard Floyd, though.
Did you like him?
We loved him. The fact that he couldn't come back was just a money thing, because we brought him on, a former first-round pick. We brought him on to the Rams defensive line. He's playing with Aaron Donald, just dominating, having a great old time. Well, he played himself right out of re-signing with the Rams because we just happened to be in that stage where we didn't have the money. And then this year, all of a sudden, now we got the money back. And so the Rams are beefing up the offensive line with all of that. Even signed tight end out of from Seattle. Can't remember his name at the moment, but he's like one of the top rated run blocking tight ends. So I got basically another offensive lineman. So I have a feeling the Rams are going to want to do some running of the ball and not put so much pressure of getting people in Matt Stafford's face so he can just wing it all over the place. Because then you're going to have a healthy Puka and a healthy Cooper Kupp, and should be fun next year in the NFC West, man.
It's going to be competitive, I think. Because the Rams being good and the Niners being good is good for that division. We'll see about Seattle. No more Pete Carroll to kick around.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah. So Rod and I will be back. We haven't been back since the Super Bowl, so I think we've dealt with the sadness of losing that game. And we're going to be back talking about the first couple days of free agency there. And then Brian and I will be back on Thursday talking Warriors. So we'll have the full boat of shows this week, which will be fun.
Look at that.
All right. So for Brad, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.
Peace.